We will now begin the public symposium organized by JICA, Protecting the Lungs of the Earth, the current status and challenges of the world's three major tropical forests and their conservation measures. My name is Nurdeen, Deputy Director of JICA's Global Environment Department and Head of the Forest and Natural Environment Group. Thank you all very much for your participation. Today in this venue we have more than 100 people in our audience, including people related to the organizers. And as for our online participants, we have a little less than 400 people. And we are very grateful to have so many people in our audience today. And before we open the symposium, please allow me to make 3 housekeeping announcements. The first announcement is about this symposium. It's interpretation. We will have simultaneous interpretation today. And here in the venue, you can hear the symposium in Japanese. For our audience in the venue, please set your interpretation kits to Channel 1, Channel 2 for English, and Channel 3 for French. Our online audience can listen to please set your language settings to Japanese on the lower right corner of your Zoom screens for our online audiences, and you can also choose English and French interpretations. Housekeeping announcement number 2. Presentation materials will be projected in Japanese. And for our English and French speakers in our venue today, we have handed out auto-translated versions of the Japanese materials. And we are very sorry, but to our Zoom participants, please note that today only Japanese language materials will be projected. And lastly, for those of you in the venue, we have distributed today's pamphlet along with sticky notes. So if you have any questions at the end of the first and second sessions, part 1 and part 2, please write your questions on the sticky notes and post those questions on the sticky notes on the large pieces of paper that are at the rear entrance of the venue. And to our online participants, please utilize the Q&A box on Zoom. And please note that due to time constraints, we will not be able to answer all questions. And thank you very much for your understanding. Now, first of all, on behalf of the organizers, Takahiro Morita, Director of the Global Environment Department of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, would like to make a few words of welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, both here in the venue and online, hello. My name is Morita, and I am the Director of the Global Environment Department of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. On behalf of today's organizers, I would like to welcome you to today's symposium. Thank you very much for attending today's public symposium titled Protecting the Lungs of the Earth, the Current Status and Challenges of the World's Three Major Tropical Forests and Their Conservation Measures. The theme of this year's symposium is straightforward. Let us protect the tropical forests that are called the lungs of the earth. This is not at all a new theme. The importance of preserving forests and nature has been advocated since long before deforestation and nature destruction caused by development became a problem. And even today, voices advocating for the protection of tropical forests in many parts of the world have not ceased. Now, why have we chosen to focus on this unchanging theme at this time? That is because protecting forests, in particular, protecting tropical forests is as necessary for our planet for ourselves as ever, and it has become a much more pressing issue than ever before. The world is experiencing ecological degradation at an unprecedented rate, and conservation and restoration of the natural environment is an urgent task. In fact, over the past 30 years, forest area equivalent to 5 times the size of Japan has disappeared, and a total of 1 million species are said to be in danger of extinction. Now, in the face of such situations, what is it that we can do? JICA, as an implementing agency of Japan's Official Development Assistance (ODA), has worked with countries around the world in a variety of cooperation efforts to conserve tropical forests. Nevertheless, the cooperation we have provided so far is only a small part of the larger global picture. And because this is a global scale issue, various countries, institutions, and the international community must work hand in hand to tackle this issue together. This symposium is co-organized by the Mainichi newspaper and sponsored by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, the Forestry Agency, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, IST, the Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute, and by the International Tropical Timber Organization, ITTO, together with many international organizations. In addition, Sumitomo Forestry is also our co-sponsor. We are deeply grateful for the support we have received from so many people and believe that the reason for this support is that the question of this symposium, what we should do to conserve tropical forests, is an unwavering theme. For this symposium, we have invited government officials from Brazil, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which have vast tropical forests known as the lungs of the earth. We would like to deepen our understanding of the issues on tropical forest conservation and discuss solutions with Japanese experts and companies. The theme, "Let us protect tropical forests," has been discussed many times in the past, but it is a theme that has not yet been resolved and should continue to be considered in the future. That is why we would like to discuss tropical forest conservation in a straightforward manner today. We hope that this symposium will provide an opportunity for our audience to think about what you can do for the conservation of tropical forests, not as someone else's problem, but as your own matter, as a responsibility given to those who live on this earth. JICA will continue its efforts to pass on the bounty of nature to future generations. We will work to preserve the natural environment, which is important for local communities and for a sustainable global environment. To this end, we will strive to scientifically understand the value of the nature to be protected and its current status, and we will work to model projects and reflect this knowledge in policies, making use of traditional knowledge as well. We will proceed in our collaboration with various partners to promote our efforts. Lastly, I hope today's symposium will be a fruitful and meaningful experience for all of our speakers and participants today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next, from our co-host for this organization, or organizer, Mr. Hidehiko Morimoto, Executive Officer and General Manager of the President's Office of the Mainichi newspapers, will make a few remarks. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Morimoto. I am from the Mainichi newspapers. Thank you very much for joining us today in spite of your busy schedules. As a co-organizer, on behalf of our company, I would like to say a few words. The Mainichi newspapers decided to co-sponsor today's symposium because of our relationship with Ms. Wangari Maathai, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004 for her tree planting activities in Kenya and her contributions to democracy. 2 months after Ms. Matai received the Nobel Peace Prize, the Mainichi newspapers invited her to Japan, and in an interview with our editorial director, Ms. Matai came across the Japanese word mottainai and was impressed by its meaning, saying that in addition to the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, the key words for protecting the environment, mottainai also means respect for the irreplaceable resources of the earth. Matai-san, Ms. Matai, advocated making the word a common language for the world to protect the environment, and the Mainichi newspaper set up a secretariat to promote that project, which was how the Mottainai project began. Since then, donations from supporting organizations and individuals have continuously been sent to the tree planting program established by Ms. Matai in Kenya. After Ms. Matai passed away in 2011, we have continued to carry on her legacy, and to date, more than 4 million trees have been planted. And Mr. Kosaku Ohnaka, who will later report on his activities in DR Congo, and worked with Ms. Matai for a while during his tenure at the Kenyan embassy. Mr. Ohnaka's relationship with Ms. Matai led him to contribute a local report to the Mainichi newspaper's news site, and he was the bridge for making this symposium a joint event between JICA and the Mainichi newspapers. So with such combination of events that led to this symposium on the 20th anniversary year of the Mottainai campaign, for which we are very grateful and also believe is quite meaningful that we have been able to hold the symposium at that timing. During her lifetime, Ms. Matai worked in the Congo Basin, the Amazon River Basin, and in Indonesia's vast tropical forests, which she called the 3 lungs that protect our planet and stress the importance of conservation for. I believe that thinking about the conservation of these world's 3 major tropical forests will help to enhance the sustainability of the planet Earth. I hope that this symposium will be exceptionally meaningful for all of you who are attending today, and for the 3 lungs of our Earth, and for the world as a whole. Thank you all very much for your attention. Mr. Morimoto, thank you very much. Next, we would like to ask from ITTO, the International Tropical Timber Organization, one of our sponsors for this conference, Dr. Mohammed Nurdeen IDRISSU, for some opening remarks.
Dr. Idris, could you kindly provide us your opening remarks as one of the representatives of the supporting organizations?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Mohammed Nurdeen IDRISSU. I'm here representing the Executive Director of International Tropical Timber Organization. She was supposed to be here, but unfortunately she is still on a mission abroad. So I'll be delivering these remarks on behalf of Ms. Shams Saskuru, and joined by 2 of my colleagues from ITTO. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great honor for me to represent the International Tropical Timber Organization at this symposium, and to extend on behalf of ITTO Executive Director Ms. Shams Saskuru our sincere appreciation to the organizers for the initiative to host the event on such an important and timely subject for an important audience like you. We are very fortunate to have representatives from the 3 tropical superpower countries, each of whom are home to the world's largest areas of tropical forest in the 3 tropical regions of Latin America, Africa, and Asia. That is Brazil, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Indonesia. ITTO is proud that all three countries are members of the organization, and they have been members since the inception of ITTO when we signed the International Tropical Timber Agreement in 1983. We are very happy to have them as members of ITTO. These three countries and other countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America play a pivotal role in the conservation and sustainable use of tropical forests and the sustainable use and trade of forest products. Steadfast international support is therefore vital for them to succeed. And I would like on this occasion to express the ITTO deepest gratitude on behalf of ITTO Executive Director Ms. Shamsat Kuru to the government of Japan for their continued support and commitment to ITTO and its members. ITTO also commends the work of the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, that is JICA, for its outstanding work and assistance rendered to the ITTO member countries in this regard. ITTO and JICA renewed our long-standing collaboration in October 2022, demonstrating the commitment of both organizations to tackle global challenges such as biodiversity loss and climate change by combining our complementary strengths. We thank JICA for our successful collaborative efforts in past years, and we look forward to accelerated and renewed collaborative relationship in the near future. Our involvement in this symposium and in training event tailored for the DRC is going to be held later this week. And this is a clear example of our cooperation between ITTO and JICA. It is widely acknowledged that forests, especially tropical forests, are vital for the well-being of the planet. It is also widely recognized that the three major basins, that's the Amazon, the Congo Basin, and the Borneo-Mekong South Asian Basin, account for the lion's share of all tropical forests. Together, these three basins play a crucial role in stabilizing global climates, hosting mega diverse biodiversity, supporting livelihood, providing valuable environmental services, and fulfilling many social needs through the sustained and reliable provision of forest good and ecosystem services, from food, material, to medicine and water security. Each basin has its own regional political process, which in turn feed into the international processes, culminating in accord and initiatives such as Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forest and Land Use, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the Ministerial Declaration from the World Forestry Congress 2021, which was held in 2022, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its associated sustainable forest goals. The sustainable management of tropical forests in the three basins is key to the achievement of all these global goals. Yet, all three basins also face threats and pressures from human activities, and increasingly, the accelerated negative impact of climate change. Against this background, it is clear that the decisive action and large-scale investment are urgently needed to ensure the sustainable management of these basins, hence securing the survival of these invaluable tropical forests. ITTO has an almost 40-year history of collaborative work across the three basins, promoting the sustainable management and conservation of tropical forests, and the expansion and diversification of international trade in tropical timber from sustainable managed and legally invested forests. For example, since the early 1990s, ITTO has been producing and updating policy guidelines, criteria and indicators for the sustainable management of tropical forests, and supporting member countries to implement these through field operations that advance sustainable forest management in a wide range of areas. These include forest and landscape restoration, wood use efficiency, the competitiveness of wood products, promotion of lesser-known wood species, market intelligence and transparency in trade and supply chains, forest law enforcement and governance, biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and livelihood of forest-dependent communities. ITTO has provided guidance on the design of fiscal and non-fiscal incentive for sustainable forest management and build knowledge and capacity on reduced impact logging and other measures to ensure harvesting is carefully planned and controlled. In the Amazon region, for example, the organization has enhanced the monitoring of forest cover and land use. With support from the Japanese government, ITTO has also funded projects that improved forest and wildlife management and early warning system in Indonesia and Peru. In the Congo Basin, for example, ITTO projects have advanced forestry education by updating curricula and improving infrastructure and equipment, and conducted studies and workshops to promote further processing and trade of tropical timber within Africa and beyond. In the Asia Pacific region, for example, ITTO is funding projects that is aimed to increase sustainable production and consumption of tropical timber and tropical wood products in the domestic market. We are also funding the second phase of a project aimed at enhancing sustainable production and marketing of teak in the greater Mekong sub-region. There are many more examples of ITTO working in support of sustainable management and conservation of these lungs of the earth, all of which are available on the ITTO website at www.itto.int. However, the ones that I have mentioned can provide an appreciation of the spectrum of efforts that are needed for both international community and tropical countries to preserve these valuable ecosystems. It is my hope that today's session will enhance the knowledge of all participants of the challenges facing tropical forest countries. And of course, they are important for the health and well-being of societies globally. A common understanding of the issue is critical if we are to identify and implement fair and effective solutions to conserve tropical forests and continue to enjoy the priceless benefit that they accrue and provide to humankind. On that note, I extend ITTO best wishes for an afternoon productive discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Idris, thank you very much for your opening remark. In part one of today's symposium, we will be hearing from Mr. Kosaku Ohnaka, a JICA expert in the DRC, as well as we'd like to invite a Professor Kaoru Kitajima from Kyoto University, talking about the contribution of tropical forests to the global environment. From here, I'd like to hand over to Ms. Ai Oba, Deputy General Manager, Life Science and Environment Department, the Mainichi newspapers. Ms. Oba, the floor is yours. Thank you for introduction. My name is Oba, Mainichi newspaper. I've been looking forward to hearing all of the presentations and speech in today's symposium. Thank you for having me. In part one, we will be listening to the keynote presentation from two people. The first one is Mr. Kosaku Ohnaka, as JICA expert. He is now working in the DRC. He will be talking about his own activities and status quo about tropical forests. Earlier, Mr. Morimoto from Mainichi newspaper briefly talked about multi-night campaign and Dr. Wangari Maathai. And Dr. Maathai called the three lungs protecting the earth, one of which is in DRC. And Mr. Ohnaka is working on the protective activities for tropical forest and peatland. He used to work for Kenya Embassy and work together with Dr. Matai to build closer relations between Japan and Kenya. And he, receiving the instruction from Dr. Matai, is at the forefront of tropical forest conservation. Mr. Ohnaka, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Ohnaka. The report, the conservation of Congo Basin, a global lung. I'd like to talk about this. She is Dr. Wangari Maathai, the first Nobel Prize winner in the environmental domain. I met her while I worked for the Kenya Embassy. Around that time, she was working for a countermeasures against climate change as well as a tropical forest conservation. And she prioritized the conservation of Congo Basin as her highest priority. To the Japanese government as well, she emphasized the importance of the protection of Congo Basin in a high-level manner. In Kenya Embassy, I was in charge of environmental issues, and together with her, I worked to make a difference to the Japanese government. Unfortunately, around that time, there was no promises about concrete support for the protection of Congo Basin. However, 10 years after that, I became I started working for a Japanese government, and as an expert, I went to a Congo Basin to show the satellite image of Africa. You can see there are so many greens in the map. Some of you may thought that way. However, you can see some lightly green area. These are not forests actually. The most part of them are savanna, or they used to be forests. However, there's an increase in progress on logging and deforestation is going on. And thick green area in this map is the Congo Basin. The Congo Basin, to African people and all the humanity, how important it is for the survival of human beings, that is apparent by taking a look at this map. I worked for the DRC with the capital in Kinshasa. This is Kinshasa, one of the largest African cities with 10 million population or more. This is where I work, the Environment Ministry in DRC. In my presentation, I'd like to talk about my own activities as JICA expert, and the second one, challenges to work for the Congo Basin, and the third one is status quo as heads up what's going on there. First, I'd like to introduce my activities. I'm a policy advisor, but as one of the staff member of the partner ministry, that is what basically do, but which is the most important aspect in my work. Even for the difficult challenges we need to take on ourselves for further challenges with positive mindset. Of course, we need to work on challenges, but also we need to strengthen diplomatic bilateral relationship as well to involve high-ranking officials of the government, and that is another important aspect in our activity. In Congo Basin conservation, this is one of the important challenges globally. So together with many governments and international organizations, they are supporting the activity. So we need to enable synergy with the activities of these countries and institutions for our activities to make a difference. And the outcomes and the results need to be promoted and emphasized against international society. Next, I'd like to talk about challenges and difficulty in the conservation activities in Congo Basin. Congo Basin ranges 6 countries with 10 times as large as the total areas of Japan. The DRC accounts for 60% of the Congo basin. This is the Forestry Bureau in the DRC. As you can see here, they are made of modified containers as the DRC government, with the budget limitation, the budget structure and capabilities, we are in a very tough situations and circumstances. Roads, excluding some major main roads, they are mostly unpaved and many regions are not accessible by vehicles or cars. Against such circumstances, motorbikes, boats, or airplanes, these are fully utilized. Airplanes are not what we can usually imagine, but you can charter some private Cessna planes for all activities. The budget and infrastructure, road infrastructure, and there are a lot of challenges and issues. But in the future, the government and international institutions need to work in tandem with each other to make a step forward. Lastly, I'd like to talk about what's going on at the moment as a heads up. This is Kisangani, the largest city in a Congo basin with a population about 1.5 million. This is where Kisangani is located, at the belly point of the African continent, if you will. And the first theme is logging. What kind of people conduct logging? The local people living there, local community conduct logging, or artisanal logging, what is called in the region. It is used for export as well, but basically the lumber is produced for domestic purposes, domestic uses. The other is a timber-related companies or timber concession. It's another form that they produce timber. The timber or lumber concession, companies and corporations a closer contract for a long time with the size of one prefecture of Japan, and you put them into logging areas and conduct a priority logging with large diameter trees spending decades. And this is how the timber concession conducts logging. There are so many large trees being logged, and timbers and woods. In such forms, these are exported outside the country. Unfortunately, in the Congo basin, there are so many trees produced illegally, logged illegally. And where they are being exported to, in what way they've been used. This is what I'd like to ask you to thoroughly consider. The second theme I'd like to touch on is agriculture. Around Kisangani, from tropical forests, and the shift from tropical forests to agricultural lands are going on in a very significant manner. What kind of people logs, cut down trees and turn them into agricultural lands? The first one is the most poor citizens. They need to make a living. They need to live and eat meals, and for that to be cheap, they need to conduct logging and make lands as agricultural land. And for them not to cut down trees and while making a living at the same time, what kind of things we need to do? That is some things we are to consider. People with funds and capital, they conduct larger scale production, not for their own, but also for commercial purposes, for profits. They culture crops for such purposes. In some cases, what they produce, what you can see in green is the dry land rice, and also you can see some rounded leaves. This is cacao. Some of you are aware, but in cacao, we see so many increased international demands, which trades at higher prices. So cacao is profitable, and you cut down trees and produce them. This is a large supermarket in Kinshasa. On both sides, you can see commercial products. They are all chocolate. Chocolate and tropical forest have you ever known the relationship between these in the past? And the last one is conservation of peatland. Peatland, perhaps this may be a new term for many of you, but in the wetland, plants are accumulated as organic matters, and spending so many times and generations, it will become peatland, and 1 centimeter peatland will take 10 years to form. Perhaps it would be closer to a coal. In a way, they contain a lot of carbon, and it will release significant amount of carbon or CO2 by fire or dryness. This is a distribution of peatland. Many knew that there's so significant peatland in the Congo basin, but this is the largest. This has been confirmed to be the largest among on the Earth, and that is confirmed in 2017. This is the survey investigation of peatland. We put this pole into the ground. We assess what will be the depth and whether there's peatland in the ground. This photo we dig with 5 meters or so. That would take a very long time to see accumulation of the peatland, or 500 years to take. You can see this is the Congo equator area with so many peatland lying there. What is quite surprising, the peatland in the DRC, 29 billion CO2s, 100 times as large as the Japan CO2 emissions, are stored within this peatland. And the peatland, as it stores carbon, but not only that, indigenous people will make a sustainable living in the area. In this manner, they receive so many blessings from the forest. Indigenous people make a living based on the blessings coming from the area. This is the distribution of the peat. You can see what is highlighted in blue. This is where we plan to the agricultural development is planned to be conducted, and the yellows are where the trees are being cut down. And also oil is there in the peatland as well. There are so many various development projects and plans going on, and how we can conserve the peatland while protecting the indigenous people's lives. That is an important issue and challenge that we are to face with. It's a satellite map again, what I briefly talked about. These are what you can find in this thick green area, the Congo basin. Without appropriate countermeasures, then in 70 to 80 years from now, this Congo basin tropical forests area will be gone. This is the Yamato Damashi, or Japanese spirit. With that, we need to take countermeasures for the conservation of tropical forests. That is not what I'm going to highlight, but please get interested in the tropical forest conservation and think about this issue. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Ohnaka, thank you very much for your presentation. What is happening on Congo basin? I was very shocked to learn the reality of the basin and your message. I would like to discuss and think about the message. And the column that you pen is to protect the lungs of the earth is featured by new Mainichi newspaper, and you can read the past post. And thank you, Mr. Ohnaka and Ohnaka for his. But in Japan, you might think that rainforests are irrelevant to us. However, we are members. We are members of Earth, and when we think about global environment, we need to know what kind of tropical what kind of role that tropical forests play. And the next presenter is Professor Kitajima, Kaoru Kitajima, and she is the professor at Graduate School of Kyoto University. She majors in plant ecology and rainforest ecology, and she is a chairperson of the Ecological Society of Study and mechanism how those trees play important role. And also she is serves as a chairman of Association for Tropical Biology Conservative, and she is also a co-author of the report of IPCC and UN Food System Summit. She's a member of scientist community, so she's a front runner in this field domestically and internationally. So Professor Kitajima, please take the stage. Thank you very much for the introduction. I am Kitajima, and in this venue and also online, I'm so happy to see so many of you have decided to participate. And Ohnaka, what I do is also already featured in Ohnaka-san's post, and please, I encourage to read your column as well. And tropical forest, the role that played by tropical forest, you know that they're important for us. And what is important is that global environment, SDGs 17 goals, one is to protect green and protect the ocean and the land, and to that it's extremely important for all life forms, wildlife, and economic activity, and our livestock. And there's a wedding cake diagram in the Stockholm discussion, and in that diagram, that what is sitting at the very bottom, the green part, it speaks the volume of the importance of tropical forest, and 45% of the global surface is tropical forest. This is from Global Forest Resources Assessment, and they publish this every 5 years. In 2020, this is from 2020, and we have 3 major tropicals, and we have an equator. And if you can see that 45% of the total global forest is tropical forest, but the GPP, the gross photosynthesis, when it comes to photosynthesis, you can see that on the terrestrial tropical forest, 60% of the gross primary production is covered by tropical forest, and you can see the total of tropical forest, boreal tropicals, and 40 gigaton is responsible for tropical forest. And photosynthesis is how it works, is that this is to convert carbon dioxide into carbon and oxygen, and the carbon, this is how photosynthesis works, and the carbon is captured or stored by trees or plants. And what plants do that? The gross primary production, half of it is lost by the respiration of trees, like our lungs do. They produce CO2, and then when they grow leaves, and they die, and they get decomposed. And in total, you can see that this how much CO2 is emission. But gradually in the soil and soil captured CO2 and also peatland, it plays a very important role in capturing the CO2. And ecologists, the respiration, and we have been studying if this is working in a balanced manner, and if the balance of photosynthesis minus respiration is 0 or not. If it's greater than 0, that means forests are capturing CO2. So that's doing exactly the opposite of our lungs too. So that's exchange. What is important is that for many years, carbon to be captured, and when the disturbance or logging or deforestation, and forest needs to recover to be able to capture CO2, and if they can capture CO2, but the 200 forest, if they are destroyed, they capture CO2 203 years and 300 years, and once CO2 is emission, and it's really difficult to store that CO2. That's once it's emitted into the atmosphere. And globally speaking, IPCC and we have a scientist, we get together to see which way we are going. And this is a IPCC assessment report number 5. And the latest one is assessment report number 6 is the latest report. I think this one is more, this is easier to understand. What AFOLU is the agriculture, forestry, or other land of use. This is about burning forest to create a farmland or deforestation. That means we are emitting more carbon or CO2 and fossil fuels. If we burn fossil fuels that was captured in the ground, if we burn it, we are releasing it into the atmosphere. And how much CO2 is growing in atmosphere, if we look into it, and terrestrial vegetation is doing really good work to maintain the level of CO2 in the atmosphere. And AR6, that's IPCC AR5. If you look at the latest report, not only they are capturing or storing, but on the land and the ocean, there are different process models, and more than we estimate for the past 40 years, they're doing really working hard to maintain or contain CO2. And also they are contributing to the circulation of water. Professor Kumagai, Tokyo University, published this a little more than 10 years ago. In the forest, we have a lot of leaves, and not only they respirate and capture CO2, but they do also produce water. And once the water is produced and evaporated, it goes, it circulates and then makes rainfall. So it's an extremely important process to maintain the ecosystem and mitigating climate change. Tropical forests are vital, but not only that. In forest, including tropical forest, all those forests, 80% of forests are home to 80% of the Earth biological species, and especially tropical forest. This is from 2022 paper, and if you look at all terrestrial vertebrates in the world, more than 60% of them live in the tropical forest, and 30% live in tropical temperate forest. And there are 1,200 tree species, and across the globe, 70,000 species, and 50,000 of them are, grow in tropical forest. And the tropical forest, they never exchange winter, and they never exchanged ice age, and wildlife cross-fertilize, and they grow each other. And so you only have army ants in tropical areas, tropical forest, and you have certain birds that feed on army ants. So there's a specific lifestyle that is being heard in this environment. And bats, they feed on insects, but there are certain bats that they eat flowers and cocoa, and theobromine and caffeine is also produced or result of evolution over time. And since 55 million years ago, a diverse flora and fauna started to evolve, and by cross-fertilizing Africa and Asia on those main large continent, they evolve, and that would be too multi-night to let it be destroyed. And those are 3 major tropical forests, and you see this in each area, what kind of wildlife lives, and you can see that a kind of flora and fauna live in different parts of areas and the number of species. And when it comes to biodiversity, you cannot find anywhere that is more diverse than those major 3 tropical forests. But those are not hotspots. And hotspots are around 3 major tropical areas. There are only certain rare species you can only find in certain areas. And like IPCC, Biodiversity and Ecological Service, this is the report, the some pages from the report. And I like to focus on the 4th largest forest, Madagascar. Madagascar is the treasure trove of diversity. There are only species you can find here and very native to this. And we have a used forest plot to study the species that live in this area and how they are contributing to maintaining ecosystem. And we do a legwork and we mark all those trees and to study what kind of species grow where. And with this data, we can draw upon certain qualitative or quantitative data. This is our report. This is the largest mammal. This is a lemur, and we collected their feces, and then we studied what they eat. And they using the data within the 300 meters and 500 meter area. We studied how much it is dispersed by this monkey, and 60% of the seeds and plants are spread by lemur monkeys. So not only villagers, everyone relies on this forest. And we were studying how many species here, and we interview local people and we ask them how much they use those species. They use those trees to make tools or do all sorts of things. In their 80%, more than 80% or 90% of species are utilized to support their livelihoods. But however, this forest is being lost at a breakneck speed.
And the reason behind that, first of all, is the rise in population and the conversion to farmland. And this is the same situation in the decline of forest area, both in the African countries and Latin America. And a large reason behind that in Africa is the burning of crops. And industrial agriculture in Latin America, and this is something that we can see from the sky in these days to figure out what the farmlands are used for. And you must be aware of palm oil. These are goods that we may be using without being aware of how the manufacturing of these items, these foods, these goods are contributing to deforestation. And this is like in the Congo basin, this is an example of deforestation of peat swamp forests, and there is a negative impact to the climate as well. And this is a Cambodia example, and this is something that I would like you to think about. Now, and when we say the community, the residents, who are they? Are they people who have been living there for generations, or is the community residents people who have just moved here in the area? In Japan, we may be quite unaware of this because in one sense we have a very low self-sufficiency of food. And in COP26, to stop deforestation, 23% of deforestation comes from, unfortunately, forced conversion to agricultural land, and that is why the Japanese government and internationally there has been policies that have been formulated in order to tackle that issue. And as summary, tropical forests contribute to climate change mitigation through carbon sequestration and storage, and it is a very waste for us to lose such a good asset, a valuable asset of us, and I would very much like to think about this large issue together with today's ASEANs. Thank you very much for your attention. Dr. Kitajima, thank you very much for your explanation.
In tropical forests, the biodiversity and circulation of water, all of these buttress the beings on the earth. I understood that through your presentation. And Japanese people living in Japan, this is not something ignorable. We need to have ownership to think about these issues. Thank you very much for your excellent speech. And please give them a round of applause for the distinguished two speakers for the key A part 1. Thank you very much. Oba-san, thank you very much for your moderation in part 1. As we end part 1, we'd like to move to part 2. In part 2, we'd like to focus on Brazil, Indonesia, and the DRC with a very significant areas of a tropical forests. They will be talking about the status quo of the 3 largest tropical forests in the world. And the first speaker, Nara-san, the second speaker, Zahuru-san, will be talking in English, and the third speaker, Matanda-san, will be speaking in French. Today, simultaneous interpretation is available, and Japanese speakers can listen to in Japanese. If you'd like to listen to Japanese, please turn to channel 1 of the translation receivers. And those people joining online, please select the channel of your preference. First, we'd like to invite Ms. Nara Vidal Pantoja, Environmental and Renewable Natural Resources Agency, General Coordinator of the Center for Environmental Monitoring Information. This center, the Center for Environmental Monitoring Information, is under IBAMA, and she's been working to conduct the monitoring in a real-time manner through satellite image to monitor the illegal loggings as well as check the situation of forest fire. Ms. Nara, the floor is yours.
Konnichiwa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nara. I am from Brazil. Specifically, I am from state of Acre, state of the Amazon. And today, I am very happy to be here to talk about the current status and conservation challenges of tropical forest and the conservation challenges of tropical forest in Brazilian legal Amazon. It's an important topic because the conservation in the Brazilian Amazon requires coordinated actions at local, national, and international levels. Let me start the presentation, share with you an overview Brazil of forests. Our territory is the 5th largest areas in the world. It is 22.5 times bigger than Japan. Brazil is a forest country with 488 million hectares. It corresponds to 57.3% of territory in natural and planted forest. This represents the largest tropical forest area in the world. The area of the natural and planted in Brazil is 57.3%. And the other areas is planted area. The area of the forests itself is 20.6. The bigger than area of Japan. According your survey in Brazil, we have 57 points land areas and the other and the forest area and the land areas. Now we talk about the situation of forests and the other biomes in Brazil. In this image, in Brazil, we have 5 biomes. Oh, sorry, 6 biomes. And the Amazon, Cerrado is this area, Pantanal, Caatinga, Mata Atlântica, and Pampa. In this case, the Amazon, it's represent 93 of biomass in natural forest on national in Brazil. Now, in the previous slides, we have a general view of the entire country. Let's focus on the Amazon region, this region. In case the Brazil, the tropical forest correspond to 5.5 million square kilometers. Around 60% is located in Brazil. The other 40% is in 8 countries, neighbors countries. This region corresponds greater biodiversity on plants, animals, and the water resources. It is estimated to be home to more than 3 million hectares, 3 million species of organisms, and more than 2,500 species of trees. Only this tropical forest. Other point. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Previous. In Brazil, the Amazon forest covers 5 million square kilometers. And in this case, 44% of which is protect conservation and the indigenous areas in this part, in blue and the green areas. About the forestation trends, the amount of deforestation from 1919 to 2020 was 400 to 10,000 square kilometers in this red area. Japan's land area is 38,000 square kilometers. Brazil is among the 10 countries with the highest deforestation rates between 1990 and 2020. In this year, there was like explosive growth in deforestation in the early 2000s. So the Brazilian government adopted measures to stop the rampant growth of deforestation rate, such as the action plan for the prevention and control of deforestation in the Amazon. There was a significant reduction of this reduction of the 83% in 2012, which is increased in the rate in the following years, reaching around 15,000 square kilometers in 2021. And last year, there was a reduction of 22%. This is a big significant for Brazil. About the deforestation alerts detected by National Institute for Space Research in Brazil, showed that there was 50% reduction from 2002 to 2003. This reduction, this explained by the increase and enforcement actions carried out in the Amazon, which curb the advance of deforestation. This is my agency and my working. In the Amazon, one of the main drives of deforestation is the logging. The logging with the removal of trees of commercial value that cause forest degradation and after deforestation. The removal of trees without authorization and technical criteria doesn't help forest sustainable. About the drive of deforestation, another deforestation drive is countering ratting. Many areas are illegally deforestation for country. Deforestation often occurs to open areas for pastures, for country. Excessive areas, forests are deforested to make way for pastures, as cattle related, one of the main economic activities in the region. Another the problem of deforestation, it's what the pastures are abandoned and become unproductive. Agriculture is another drive of for deforestation in the Amazon because it occurs to open areas for the cultivation of agricultural crops such as soybeans, corn, sugarcane, and palm oil. Large areas of forest are cut down to create plantation areas, mainly due the ground demands for agricultural commodities. Other drive is mining. Mining often involves opening illegal roads and creating forest clearance to access many areas. This infrastructure can facilitate access to other illegal activities, such as illegal logging and unauthorized colonization. The illegal mining is an important cause of deforestation in the Amazon, resulting in devastating environment impacts include loss of biodiversity, habitat degradation, and pollution of water resources. Now, let's see the challenges for the conservation of tropical forests in the Brazilian legal Amazon. Brazil has the great challenge of zero deforestation by 2030. How? We hope the 16% of Amazon gone by 2030. About the key policies, this is the actual plan for the prevention and control for and the control of deforestation in the legal Amazon. In Portuguese is PPCDAM. Now we have is in 50 phases the PPCDAM. This last year, 2023 until 2027. Under the PPCDAM, zero deforestation is defined as the elimination of illegal deforestation and compensation for legal suppression of native vegetation and related greenhouse gas emission. We have 4 axes of the 50th phase of PPCDAM. The last one, no, the first one is sustainable production. In this case, we hope this in consolidation the axis of sustainable productive activity as a vector for reduction deforestation and change the Amazon reality. The other axis is environment control, environment monitoring and control. The planning and implementation of repressive actions becomes a fundamental step to prevent, curb, and discourage deforestation. The 3 axes is land and territorial planning of the Amazon by defining and promoting the rights of access to land and proposing guidelines of the occupation and use of the territory on a sustainable basis, has strong potential to contain of dynamics deforestation in the region. The axis, the other axis is rules and economic instruments. This axis proposes the coordination of incentives and the instruments to promote the development in the region. About the zero deforestation by 2030, other regulatory improvements should be proposed to make the works of special agency more efficient. Regulation the socioeconomic impacts of economic activities, encourage and guarantee production in the territories of indigenous peoples and traditional communities, and contribute to give the goal, the zero deforestation by 2030. Finally, we have many challenges to conserve the large tropical forest in the world. The first one is avoid deforestation is impossible without preventative measures. By the time enforcement officers arrive at a site where deforestation has been observed by satellite, the forest has already been lost. Observation the forest using optical satellites is difficult in the Amazon to the heavy clouds. These occur events in the dry season. That data must be shared as quickly as possible to improve enforcement. Thank you very much.
Ms. Nara, thank you very much for your presentation regarding Brazil. And you have such a vast land, and you were using state-of-art scientific technology to perform environmental monitoring to preserve your forest. It was very impressive. Let's go to Indonesia. And Mr. Muhammad Zafurul Mutakin, forestry attaché at the Indonesian Embassy in Tokyo. He's a expert in forestry, and he was a forest economist and policy researcher. And he used to work at International Cooperation Bureau of Environmental and Forestry Ministry. And since 2021, he's been working at Indonesian Embassy in Tokyo as forestry attaché. And Mr. Zafrul, please take the stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Minasan konnichiwa. Yeah, it's very difficult to have a session in an afternoon session, isn't it? Anyway, I would like to present some of the highlights of Indonesian forests, Indonesian tropical forests, what the current situation and what challenge we might face for the next decade. Yes, I would like to begin with the definition of Indonesia forest. What does it mean by Indonesia forest? Under Indonesian law, the area legally designated as forest area is under jurisdiction of Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Okay. Then the forest area basically can be both forested or can be vegetated or not. In other side, we also have like a land that is classified as other land. This can also be forested or not forested. Both the forest area and non-forest area, when they are forested or with the forest cover, then we consider as a forest. So if you come across some different figures of forest cover and as well and the forest area, then because of we have a definition about the biophysical definition and the legal definition of the forest itself. And what's the extent of Indonesia forest basically? So we have about 1.9 million kilometer square of Indonesia land, and 63% of Indonesia land, or about 120.5 million hectares, are designated as state forest area. And In addition, for the 128.5 is a 4.3 million hectares is water territories. Both the forests and the water territories are under the Ministry of Environment and Forestry Authority. So basically, the total land and marine areas managed by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry is 125.8 million hectares. Because the marine areas can also be considered as a conservation area. And the most of Indonesian remaining lands area is made up of non-forest areas of public land, known as other use areas. I already mentioned before. So what's the classification of Indonesia forests? So based on the function, we have a three function of forest in Indonesia. This is like the dominant function of the forest. Doesn't mean that the production is only the production, but they can be also have a function of protection as well as conservation. But we classify it as a production as a dominant function. First is a production forest. It's about 68.8 million hectares, and the protection forest 29.6, and the conservation forest. The protection forest meaning the forest that protects or provide environmental services to the downstream. But the conservation forest is basically the same with the protected areas in a general term. So we divided, or we basically separated between the conservation or protected areas and the protection forests. Then the production forest itself, because we usually produce the timber, we can only produce the timber in a production forest. Then we have a permanent production forest, which is it is designated or designed, determined as a production forest forever. And then we have also limited production forest, when the forest can also be locked, but it can also be protected or can be designed as also as well as can be designed as a production forest. And the convertible production forest, meaning the production forest, they can be converted into other uses. For example, for oil palm plantation, or for settlements, and for agriculture lands. This is how we try to classify and also to design the Indonesia forest. So who manages the Indonesia forest? Almost all conservation forests are directly managed by central government, which is from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Only small portion can be managed by local government. Then protection forests can be managed by central government, local government, or the community or business entity. So this is a more open area for others stakeholders rather than government to involve in a managing of the Indonesia forest. And the production forests are managed by private sectors to concession system, or the community groups through social forestry program. So this is also the forest that can be managed by all stakeholders in Indonesia. The difference between production and protection forest. In a protection forest, you can't have any timber production. You only have permitted to exploit the non-timber forest as well as the environmental services. So only in a production forest you can produce a timber. So in terms of the property of the forest itself, there is also a small portion of the forest that's owned by the community. So it is called as like a private forest, but is only a small portion in a forest in terms of product for timber production, but it is owned by the community. So next, what is the new paradigm of forest management in Indonesia? What is the shift we are now have in Indonesian tropical forest management? So we have changed from the timber-based forestry management to the multi-forestry business approaches. So in the past, we only provide permit for logging, but now we provide permit either one permit for multi-purpose businesses, not only for timber. We can have like non-timber forest products. We can have environmental services such as water, ecotourism, carbon sequestration, and so on in one permit. So with this one, we expect to generate a higher economic value of the production forest in Indonesia. And this is an opportunity to apply a new set of forestry business configuration, including forest area utilization and so on. And with the multi-forestry business, we try to have like a more sustainable landscape management in the forest in Indonesia. And we also accelerate the social forestry program in the last 9 or 10 years. We're providing communities a greater access to manage the state forest right now. For comparison, from less than 1 million hectares in 2015, now to become more than 6.4 million hectares in 2023, involving about 1.2 million households to manage our state forest through the social forestry program. So we have now 6.4, but basically we already allocated 15.5 million hectares of the state forest to be a social forestry program in Indonesia. Now we move on to what the Indonesia forest and climate action is. In Indonesia, in our nationally determined contribution, we have 5 leading sectors to reduce emission by 2030. And the leading sectors, amongst 5 leading sectors, the forestry is the most burden sector, with the 50% of the target will be achieved through the sectors. The second one is the energy sector. So to deal with this situation and to achieve what we already set up, then the Indonesian government already established what we call the forestry and other land use net carbon sink by 2030. So not only for the net zero in the forestry sector, but we basically want to have like a carbon sink. But we would like to have a minus 140 million tons of emission from the forestry and other land use sector. And this program basically have a target by 2030. It's not far away from this one. Then what is the follow Indonesia's follow net sink? It is a systematic integrated approach in the management of forest and other land use sector toward emission level of minus 140 million tons of CO2 equivalent or net sink by 2030. Then this program is part of the long-term strategy in our low carbon economy. And then also this follow net sink 2030 will use 3 working modalities. First is sustainable forest management, and the second is environmental governance, and the third is a carbon governance. That's why we are now also providing some regulation, from the presidential regulation until the ministerial regulation about the carbon economy, including the result-based payment, carbon tax, as well as a emission trading scheme. Then what make us confidence to put the volume netting 2030? This is the figures of the deforestation in Indonesia. Since 1990, we see a very high deforestation, but then we have a very low deforestation until 2020 until the 2021. So the annual deforestation rate reached about 1.9 million hectares between 1990 to 1996, but these rates increased even higher by 3.5 million hectares in the period of 1996 to 2000, but then dropped to 1.1 million hectares in 2000 until 2003. And recently, during 2020 to 2021, this trend reached slightly above 110,000 hectares. So then Indonesia deforestation in 2021-2022 declined by 8.4% compared to 2020-2021. This is the figure that make us confidence to put forward our Indonesia volume netting 2030. But we still have a challenge, isn't it? So the first challenge is how can we keeping the rate of deforestation low? So one of this situation is by addressing the forest fire. JICA already involved in that one. And also we put our effort to restore and rehabilitate degraded peatland and also mangrove. So we basically already have like a permanent moratorium for peatland in Indonesia, covering about 66 million hectares. So we will preserve it as it is. And we also have a challenge with the coping with the illicit wildlife trading, resolving agrarian conflict through social forestry, of course, and promoting legality and sustainability of forest products through SVLK. We already have like this, the sustainability of our timber verification, legality and sustainability. Now we have a VPA with the European Union and the United Kingdom, and we already also try to make it a broader market access. So this is all the situation about the current status of Indonesia forest, as well as the challenge. We already basically have like a book. It is called The State of Indonesia Forest. We produced it from 2018, 2020, 2022. Now we are preparing for the 2024 for the Committee on Forestry in Rome this year. Thank you very much.
Dr. Tahir, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your explanation on the state of forest management and challenges in Indonesia. Now, lastly, I would like to ask Mr. Morris Matanda, Director General of the Forest Inventory Development of the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Matanda has a long career in the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development in DR Congo, and his purview under forest inventory development is to conduct forest inventory, which is to measure what kind of trees are planted in the forests and how much carbon dioxide is absorbed and fixed in the forests. He is staying in Japan for 2 weeks, and last week he has visited areas around the Kanto region near Tokyo to see examples of Japanese initiatives. Mr. Miranda, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. No? What I would like to take talk to you about is, well, a lot of what I was going to talk to you about was covered by Mr. Ohnaka, so please reflect on what he took us through as well. My name is Morris Matanda Kafunda. I am the Director of Forest Inventories and Planning at the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. And today, I would like to talk to you about the current status and issues that we face at DR Congo. And I'd like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Ohnaka, and I think my speech will be some additional explanation to Mr. Ohnaka's presentation. Now, I'd like to go into details of my presentation. First of all, please allow me to explain the current situation of the tropical forests of DR Congo. We have the second largest tropical forest in the world, and which holds a very important role in the world's forestry industry. And also deforestation is what I would like to explain to you about. I'll go into details after taking you through the contents of my speech. And the fourth is our policies around the forestry industry, the sector, and then allocation or distribution of our forests. And lastly, I will touch upon our issues and what we should do. Now, first of all, the total land area of DR Congo is 2,345,410 square kilometers. So it's 2, 3, 4, kind of a sequential set of figures, but that is how large we are. And the forest land is approximately 170 million hectares. That is based on our statistics. Next of all, going on to the distribution or breakdown of forests. We have more than 25 different categories of forests, but I have simplified the categories on this slide. First of all, dense humid forest. These dense forests are on water-based soil, and we have just a very small area, but we also have mangrove forests near our mountainous areas. However, the area for these mangroves are very small, so it is not included in this list of categories. But I would like to mention that in the dense humid forests, we also have watery or water-based soil forests and mangrove forests, and all of that together is 52.4% of our forests. We have humid forests, and then we also have dry forests. So the second category is dense dry forests, and mountainous area forests are included in this second category. And on top of that, in this area that I'm showing, we have the dense dry forests here, which adds up to 12% of the entire forest area. And then secondary forests are where we are in the midst of afforestation, and we are still on the journey of doing so, and that is up to 5.3% of the entire forest land. And towards the northern region of our country, we have savannas, and then we have other land, which adds up to 2.8% of our entire land. Now, what I would like to highlight here is in what way DR Congo contributes to the forestry sector. And first of all, we need to meet the needs of the timber market. That is, we need to supply timber both domestically and overseas. That is, export. Therefore, the domestic timber demand is, on an annual basis, approximately 5.4 million cubic meters against a population of around 99 million. And against such backdrop, about 100 million people are in the urban areas and the rest are in rural areas. That is based on our 2023 macro trend data. And then the next needs that we need to meet are meeting timber energy needs, because we have a lack of electricity. So there is a great need for creating energy through coal and through timber. So 30 million tons of wood equivalent, or in other words, more than 41 cubic meters of wood is needed. And then ecosystem services and biodiversity. We have a mega level of biodiversity in our country. And from that, carbon credit supply is what we can become. Therefore, we are a high carbon stock country, and our forests are used for various usages, but we need to reconciliation of different uses is needed. First of all, we have agricultural needs and institutional aspects need to be considered, such as human capacity building. Do I still have more time? I believe I do. Now, our issues that we have, and because this is all, the slides are in all in Japanese, this presentation is rather difficult actually, but let me do my best. Now, going to the main drivers of deforestation. Between the years 2000 and 2005, deforestation rate was 0.22%. And so that is just on data. Data on forest capital, and this is actually, these are figures that have not been published yet. We will announce these figures when I go back to DR Congo. Now, the current trend of deforestation, the general trend is strengthening, but the trend varies from province to province. Deforestation is not progressing throughout the country. It depends on the province. But when we look at the causes, as you can see in these pictures, there are direct causes and then there are indirect causes as well. And this is these causes are listed in order of how strongly these causes are related. The largest direct causes slash and burn agriculture. And artisanal timber exploitation means a timber production by the local community on an individual basis. And then carbonization and fuel wood or firewood production. That is for heating. And on the right here, this production, on the bottom right, is a charcoal oven. That is how it's a traditional way of heating. And then industrial development is a very large issue which we need to tackle. And then last of all, we have bushfires. Now going on to indirect cause. First, the demographic growth, population growth in Africa. DR Congo is a very young country. The population is growing, and that is leading to deforestation. And there are political backgrounds as well. In some cases, political reasons lead to deforestation, some ill political decisions, and civil wars also lead indirectly to deforestation. As you may know, we have went through civil wars, and in the eastern region of our country, we are still experiencing civil wars, and the local communities' economy is being impacted. And then there are economic aspects as well. Poverty is one enemy of deforestation. Therefore, from here, I'd like to talk about our policies. Back in 2002, our forestry law was promulgated. And this law in this law, we introduced a moratorium on new agreements, contracts on forest concessions. And we decided on a legal review of old forest titles being converged into concession contracts between 2005 and 2011. And Red Plus process was launched as well in 2009. And you may already be aware of this. This was for reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. And then the conservation concession was institutionalized in 2011. And this is for conservation activities. And back in 2011, the National Red Plus Framework Strategy was formulated. Therefore, what was decided under this strategy was forest coverage, maintaining a forest coverage above 63.5%. That became necessary in DR Congo. And in 2012, the National Red Fund was created, and the local community forest concession was institutionalized between 2002 and 2014. This is a sustainable forest management by local populations, including indigenous people. And in 2016, CAFE, DRC collaboration began. And I talked about the national forest allocation or distributions at the beginning of my presentation, but what I am showing you here is back at the year 2000, industrial concessions amounted to more than 200, but currently we only have 45 industrial concessions, which totals at 9,253 hectares. In 2005 and 2011, we only had 5 conservation concessions, which is now up to 24, which amounts to 5,067,000 hectares. And as for community forests, we have 208 of those currently, and we are planning to increase the numbers going forward. And the current area of local forests is 3,742,000 hectares, and protected areas, this is the size of the area, and it may be hard to imagine what kind of size the protected area is without seeing it directly, but this is what it looks like. And going forward, our future initiatives, we have committed as a country to the global target of 30 times 30, which is 30% of our national land to be protected and conserved. Now, what does that exactly mean? What is happening? In January this year, we organized a nationwide meeting conference. And in that conference, the following items were decided as initiatives: the updating of new agendas for the DR Congo's forest sector, and formulation of a national forest policy, which we do not have yet, and the revision of our forest code to take into account these new themes. However, in order to implement these initiatives, human resources, material and financial resources are necessary. However, it is difficult or we are not able to secure such resources in DR Congo alone. That is all for myself. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Matanda, thank you very much for your presentation. We learned a lot about aggressive initiatives and activities. Next, we'd like to hear from JICA, which has been conducting ODA by the Japanese government as the development partners of the three countries presented to us. From here, I'd like to ask Mr. Kurimoto for his presentation. Kurimoto-san is the manager, Team 2, Forest and Natural Environment Group, Global Environment Department, JICA, overseeing forest businesses and projects in Africa and Latin America. Mr. Kurimoto, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for introduction. I'd like to talk about the support that JICA provides. The three largest tropical forest regions, we've heard the presentation from three countries, and carbon emissions countermeasures and the countermeasures against climate change. These are what we come up with, but also we need to think about people living there, and these are the areas where so many animals and beings live. That is the thing I'd like to highlight in my presentation. First, I'd like to briefly talk about international trend. Here in this slide, you can see the Earth Summit in 1992 held in Brazil. Around that time, there were three conventions agreed, which is important in international, which is on climate change and convention on biological diversity, as well as to combat desertation. And it's been 30 years since then. During this period, we've accumulated scientific data significantly. Unfortunately, even though we see accumulated scientific evidence, we are seeing the crisis is still ongoing. In every framework, by 2030, there will be activities that we need to prevent the disappearance of forests by 2030. There's short-term or mid-term a target set by 2030, stipulating what kind of actions we need to take at the moment. These are targets listed in each domain. And also within the international framework in the Conventions on Climate Change, in the COP21 in 2021, in Britain, there was Glasgow Leaders Declaration, and in 2014, on the other hand, there was a New York Declaration about forestry, but the companies were 40, but it increased to more than 100. 144 countries and regions agreed to work on this topic, so we are seeing such a trend. And also Japan has joined every framework. In terms of international funding, Japan has become one of the countries serving for forest finance pledge as well as other conservation activities, a Congo Basin pledge as well. This is the expectations we have for Japan. From here, I'd like to talk about Brazil, Indonesia, and the DRC, what kind of things we've been supporting. In Brazil, between 2009 2012, a bit in the past, but this is the project I'd like to talk about. In this period, we worked together with JAXA. We utilized ALO satellite image to conduct a forest management to detect illegal logging. As this is the tropical forest region, as you can see here, usually clouds are there. Normal satellites will not be able to see through all these clouds. However, JAXA's ALOS capability, we have been able to utilize L-band radars to see through clouds to detect changes in the forests. We utilize this to detect illegal logging of forest and then take countermeasures. This is a project we've conducted between 2009 and 2012. And together with this project and other project, we saw significant drop in a deforestation or the illegal logging during this period. And from 2016 and 2023, we started the system to detect the illegal logging, but it's not possible to eliminate all of these deforestation, illegal logging. It still continues. Therefore, as a next step, we'd like to predict where it is likely to see deforestation or illegal logging. This shows how loggings are conducted in Brazil. From 1980s, it proceeds. You can see many trees have been cut down in this video. In 2020, this is how it looks like. What is important here is that the initial phase, these rows in the straight lines, from these areas we see loggings will continue. So how we can detect the logging at the rows and take appropriate countermeasures to prevent that? This is one of the key points that we need to think about. In 2021 and onwards, we are engaged in this project. We utilize advanced radar satellites and artificial intelligence technologies in this project. Together with JAXA, we conduct a satellite imaging technology together with AIST, utilizing artificial intelligence to make prediction for logging. In JAXA, would like to utilize the data and information obtained there, and also would like to take countermeasures, so that together with IBAMA, as Nara-san has explained, we'd like to help them develop capabilities for taking countermeasures and cracking down. I'd like to show you the photos from the ground. You can see Chief Advisor Okonogi-san on the left side. The locked areas were looked into, and also we utilized drones to conduct monitoring for forest, and we made the instructions. And also on the right side, you can see Nomaguchi-san from AIST. And with artificial intelligence, the forest logging prediction, we use the parameters such as history of logging, as well as existing rows and new rows information, and river information, the protected area information, as well as whether there's any land registration or not. These information has been overlapped with each other we utilize these to come up with algorithm for prediction. And also Koyama-san is on the bottom right side in this photo. Daiichi number 4, ALOS 4 is the successing satellite and to be launched this June 30th. With ALOS 4, we can enhance the accuracy and frequency of forest logging detection. That is something we have high expectations of. So we'd like to work together with JAXA to proceed with our initiatives in Brazil. Sorry, I'm rushing through my explanation. Next, the DRC. The DRC has a total land area 6 times as large as that of Japan. Very large country. And the capital, Kinshasa, has a population of more than 10 million people, as you can see in Tokyo. And the Chikyu province is where JICA conducts projects. Please take a look at this green brochure at hand. The DRC has very, very high population increase rate. As Professor Kitajima explained, we need to cut down trees and to plant corns for self-sufficiency. That is, they are forced to make a living. And also Kinshasa, the capital, is different from Tokyo in terms of the infrastructure, especially power. Electricity infrastructure needs to be developed there. Therefore, you need to carry resources into Kinshasa to make meals, or firewoods or coals need to be brought into the capital. That is the situation. And in Chikyu province, what are we doing? The Chikyu province has the same size as Hokkaido prefecture in Japan, with the same area and total population. But what is different is that this is the national road number 1. This is paved. The other roads unpaved at the moment. With this size of Hokkaido, there are more than about 263 villages, and JICA has been working on to cover all of these. And agroforestry for 1,225 hectares, and as well as 282,000 hectares of a land use planning support. This has been conducted. And acacia, which grows fast, and also fruit trees have been planted in the region. Between these trees, as agroforestry, we plant corn, cassava, or peanuts that can be used in daily life. I'd like to touch on some of the photos there as well. 1 year and 2 years after the planting, you can see they are taller than people's height, acacia. But what is important here is that these acacia forests would be utilized over 7 or 8 years. They will be cut down and utilized as charcoal firewood in Kinshasa. So that is for sustainable use. By doing so, we can conserve and protect the existing forests. Therefore, forest protection activities are also an important topic that we pay attention to. One of the key things of this project is that international cooperation. This is what I'd like to touch on. Including the DRC, Central African countries work together for forest conservation. That is, a CAFI has been set up, Central African Forest Initiative. These countries offer funding, about 100 billion yen or so. And executive institutions, you can see partnership implementing organizations in the middle. They are participating, and JICA works for the DRC together with the ministry and province of Chikyu, as well as related fund. And in accordance with the international framework, each country and stakeholder and implementation partners and its members and the benefiting country, we need to have a close dialogue with each other to proceed with the project. That is very important. And as an implementing organization, we need to ensure whether the project is going on, because other partners will be taking a look at the situation. And JICA respects the ownership of the communities where we conduct projects. So GIS utilization, visualization, and mapping, these are what we work on, which has been highly appreciated and regarded by other partners. We'd like to make sure to obtain an excellent outcome through these activities. This slide shows photos. Experts work on the ground. Ohnaka-san, who presented that at the beginning, as policy advisor, he tried to capture the needs on the ground and tie them with the policies. And as an expert, AFTA, an association of forestry in Japan, Kuno-san and Morita-san are visiting there, and have very meticulous dialogue with the local community. And next, I'd like to talk about our activities in Indonesia. Indonesia, out of the three largest tropical forest countries, Indonesia is the closest to Japan in terms of the distance, physical distance, and we have a very important bilateral relationship between, for example, public institutions, research institutions, a private relationship. There are multi-layered relationship between Indonesia and Japan. And the support to Indonesia started in 1970s with 5 pillars shown in this slide. Especially in 2010 and onwards, in the context of climate change countermeasures, we try to work to prevent the wildfire in the forest, and also there's some explanation on data earlier. We need to prevent fire entering the pledged lands. That is very important from the perspective of climate change countermeasures. Indonesia. We are about to initiate a new phase for further cooperation. In June 2023, we initiated a project to prevent forest fire, and community-based activities have been going on in contribution to climate change adaptation projects. It started in 2020s, and also as adaptive measures, we'd like to make good use of mangrove by conserving them. We'd like to initiate all of these activities. Lastly, this is the photos from Indonesia. Top right side, when you see fire entering the peatland, it's not possible to put down fire. The fire goes down to the earth and it will be difficult to extinguish them. And you can see in the photo, Kubo-san, expert engaged in conservation of the natural environment in Indonesia. Administrations and communities worked in tandem with each other, and for that to be achieved, we listened to stakeholders to take on challenges. Sorry for rushing through all the present explanation, but this is the last slide of my presentation. This shows JICA's global agenda. We set 20 global agenda, one of which is natural environment conservation. We would like to enable future generations to enjoy various services from the natural environment. From that perspective, in line with SDGs or environmental 3 conventions that I explained earlier, we'd like to contribute and make results to achieve these things. And a tropical forest country that is a very important factors on Earth that we'd like to make to effort to serve these countries. And thank you very much.
Morimoto-san, thank you very much for your clear explanation and JICA's activity in 3 major tropical forest. It was very, I think it helped us understand what JICA does, and we have received a lot of questions from online audience, but I'm afraid since we don't have much time, we'd like to address those questions in the section 3, and we'd like to take 10 minutes break, and right outside of this venue, we have some coffee and tea. And please enjoy. And if you have any questions, then please stick out your questions on the paper that is placed on the back of this room. And for online audience, I would like to take your questions in the panel discussion, during the panel discussion, and about the resuming the third section, section 3, we'd like to resume in 10 minutes. That is 18 minutes, 3:18. Please come back to your seat before 3:18. Thank you. We'd like to resume the symposium. Are we all back? Are we all back in our seat? In the part 2, Brazil, Indonesia, and Congo, which have tropical forests, they share their current realities and their actions. In the part three, we would like to have a free discussion themed how we can preserve rainforest. And keynote speakers, Professor Kitajima and Nara-san from Brazil, and Zaful and from Indonesia, and Morimoto-san. And we have 2 new members to this panel. And so this is a panel discussion. First, we'd like to introduce 2 new speakers. In second part, we had a presentation from Congo, and this is the Mr. Benjamin Toirambe, Undersecretary of Environment and Sustainable Development Ministry, and he is the leader of administration to look after large part of Congo Basin, and he is the leader of the delegation to study forest and climate action, and also Ms. Izuka from Sumitomo Forest, director. And at Sumitomo Forest, she is a general manager to promote sustainability. And Sumitomo Forest has a long-standing vision, mission Treeing 2030, and to achieve midterm sustainability goals regarding climate action, and natural strategic formulation and management, and also information sharing are her purview. And let's proceed with panel discussion. And this is again will be moderated by Ms. Ova from Mainichi newspapers. Are we ready to start the panel discussion? Thank you very much. Thank you for waiting. And again, this is Ova. Thank you very much. In the second part, from 3 presenters from 3 countries, we had a very fruitful presentations, and I was very impressed that we're all targeting 2030 with their very ambitious goals and plans. And each one of the countries has a very ambitious goal, and they are about to implement that ambitious goal. But our tropical forests are at a very critical juncture, and we all face different challenges. And but based on the presentations we heard earlier, how can we preserve rainforest, tropical forest? We'd like to use this time to talk about how we can preserve tropical forest. And the question is, why are we losing them, and what is causing the loss of tropical forest? First is to support livelihoods of local community or local people, and we need trees to generate power or for energy. And when they use trees to produce energy, it's really difficult to slow down deforestation, and especially Africa or the case in the Congo, and Congo's population is explosively growing, and they need energy demand to support the ever-growing population. And one of the other things is that corporate activity is also contributing to deforestation. And as it was mentioned in part 1, beef and palm oil and soybean, to produce those items at scale, we are losing the forest. And those agricultural products are produced, and they supply to support our everyday life. And under this current situation, how can we preserve tropical forest and local community and corporate activity? We need collaboration from local people and corporations, but also we need international collaboration. Matanda from Congo mentioned that no country alone can address this problem. And so with that, for this panel discussion, to preserve tropical forest, we'd like to discuss in 3 parts. One is local community or local people, corporate activity, and international collaboration. As it was mentioned earlier, we have some time for Q&A, and for online audience, please send your questions into the question box. So without further ado, first, local community or local residents. We'd like to start with you, Toirambe. I believe that you are facing this problem back in your home country, Congo. And what are the potential solutions to address that? And what are the actions are you already taking to address that problem? Thank you very much for your question. I'd like to say hello to everyone here, and also to answer your question what we are doing to local community. As I mentioned, as our director, Matanda director presented, Congo people, we are very poor. We are impoverished nation, and when we are very poor, that we have to rely on to live. We need to rely on resources that can come from the community, because we all have right to live and survive. And the government in 2012 or 2022 state net plus strategy was formulated by the government. That strategy is regard for agriculture in savanna area or in a deforestation area is the only areas that we can farm. So in natural forest, we are not allowed to grow food or farm products, and we need regulation too. We need regulations too. And anything that will destruct forest, any farm activity that will destroy forest is not allowed. It's in agro and city, and we also perform environmental assessment. We need to perform assessment on environment and social impact on society, and especially among local people to local people. Those are the action that government is taking with regard to local people. Thank you. And how about you, Nara, in Brazil, to preserve tropical forest? Native people or indigenous people have important role to play, right? And what are the challenges with regard to indigenous people?
Thank you for asking. In Brazil, the indigenous people have deep traditional knowledge about forest ecosystem, and include sustainable management practice, use of medicinal plants, and the identification of key species for biodiversity. Because of this, the indigenous peoples develop important rule of protection for Amazon forest. Many indigenous people have extensive territories that encompasses areas of tropical forest. By defending their rights, this right is very risky for a component for protection. These people play a fundamental role in protection forest against illegal activities such as mining, deforestation, logging, and the other activities for the prejudicial conservation for Amazon forest.
Nana-san, thank you very much. the knowledge of the indigenous people is important, I understand, in conserving the tropical forests. Now, lastly, Kitajima-san, may I ask your opinion on how we should protect Kunimoto-san, how should we protect the tropical forests, with the participation of local residents? Thank you very much for your question. And I think the sustainable activities are being conducted with the participation of local residents, and by locations, by areas. The community people are living their daily lives, utilizing, depending on the resources in their communities. And like I mentioned, protecting their lives is also very important. And in particular, there are 3 key points that I'd like to mention to that end. First of all, the ownership, respecting the ownership of the people of the community. In JICA's activities, participation-based forest management is what we have been promoting. With the participation of residents, we should be able to promote the management of forests. For example, in afforestation, we should incorporate their wishes in what kind of species we should plant, and what kind of products, forest products, they would like to be producing and selling. We should prioritize their wishes in that sense. And the second point is that a lot of people's participation when it comes to protecting the community forest, not just there are various stakeholders, not just the residents, but businesses as well. So a place where all stakeholders can get together to discuss things is necessary. And the third point I'd like to raise is, as I mentioned earlier, mapping, visualizing the forests for the community residents is another important aspect. Where the forests are, where deforestation is happening, should be visualized in order as we proceed with our measures. That is what I think. Kunimoto-san, thank you very much. Dr. Kitajima, in your presentation in part 1, you also touched upon local residents. And listening to the 3 panelists, can we ask for your thoughts as well? Yes, thank you. There are different types of residents. For example, with a traditional knowledge, when the population was low, burning the farmland was a traditional knowledge, a skill that people had inherently, that would revive the lands quickly. But in the current ways of utilizing land, what was, for example, where in the past 20 years was necessary for the recovering of a certain burnt land, the concession owners would use those lands immediately. And also people immigrating to new lands those new people, new residents do not have the traditional knowledge and skills. So we must look at the indigenous people, the people traditionally living in that community with side by side by nature. We should look at that as a natural situation, but also look at the different types of community residents in order to be able to walk side by side with all types of people. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Kitajima, that viewpoint of different community members, I believe, is very important. Now, going on to the second theme, corporate activities. In particular, this is very close to, we must be mindful that this is very close to our Japanese consumption activities as well. Now, Dr. Zafro, the loss of tropical forests from corporate activity is a reality, what are the government measures that are taken in Indonesia?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yes, in terms of the government Indonesia's measures to prevent forest loss as well as the deforestation, we basically put our efforts back in 2011. We have a moratorium of new license for clearing primary natural forest and peatland. So from the 2011, we try to put the moratorium. So we postpone the issuance of new license for clearing primary natural forest and peatland, and until 2021, I think we permanently stop the issuance of the license. So meaning that the current license is the existing license who are working in Indonesia, they operating in Indonesia, just like Sumitomo, and then for example, for Japan, like Sumitomo, Marubeni, and so on. So the second is like a prevention of forest land, forest and land fires. This is also the one that we try to put in our priority. In this case, the company, in collaboration with the local people, try to team up in terms of the preventing the forest fire. So we try to collaborate between the company and also the local people, as well as for those who are not who are far from the company. The fire awareness village also for the community group also have like pay attention from the government. And I already mentioned in my presentation, multi-business forestry basically can make the company have diversify the activities as revenue, not only from timber. So basically they do not need to rely on the timber. That's the three I think the basic or the principal policy that have been set up by Indonesian government to prevent loss, and also to improve to involve the participation, either the private sector as well as the local communities. Thank you.
Dr. Zafur, thank you very much. And Zafur-san mentioned Sumitomo Forestry, and we would also like to hear from the company as well. Sumitomo Forestry has been active in Indonesia for more than 50 years. So Izuka-san, I believe that there's been good times and bad times alike in your business activities in Indonesia. What kind of activities is the company involved in? Thank you very much. Is it okay if I show my presentation slide? I will take 10 minutes to take you through my presentation. My name is Izuka. Thank you very much. I am from the Sustainability Promotion Department from Sumitomo Forestry, and I'd like to give a brief introduction of our company, and I'd like to introduce what we do. Can we go to the next page, please? Now, Sumitomo Forestry in our corporate philosophy states that we would like to utilize wood as healthy and environmental friendly natural sources, and that is our Sumitomo business spirit. And they went back in the Edo era, hundreds of years ago, when the government back then, headed by the shogun, by the shogun, we were provided given a license for copper mining, and energy was necessary for that, which we sourced from timber and coal. And that is the main reasons why the timber was deforestation proceeded back then. But you can see in how bare the mountains became in our history, shown on the slide here. And when the mountains become so bare, then water shooting, sudden waters shooting will come around, and there was a steep decline in agricultural production in the surrounding areas. So, and back 130 years ago, the company set out to restore nature back to its natural state. And at the peak, more than 200 plants were planted towards the afforestation at this around this copper mine. And you can see how green the mountain looks at the moment. And the copper mine has already closed, but this is the origin of Sumitomo Forestry.
And right now, not only domestic forests, but also overseas forest, we import timber and also wooden residences are built in Japan, Australia, and the US. We plant trees in other countries, and we have 5 biomass power stations. Please turn to the next page. We have about 48,000 hectares of forest in Japan, but the largest one is accounted for in Indonesia that we have. We have 172,000 hectares, with a 100,000 hectares of mangrove as well. From 2009, we've been working for a long time in New Zealand, Papua New Guinea as well. We own forest, tropical forest, and the forest in Japan, as well as larger pine in Papua New Guinea as well. We plant trees in various places and own their various forests. Turn to the next page. In 2022, we set a target by 2030. As many mentioned, 2030 is some milestone. Then before that, we set out some of the things we'd like to achieve. So the values for the earth, values for the people, as well as values for the society. As we are a company, we want to maintain everything and achieve every 3 of these values, and that is the target we'd like to achieve through our business and through our activities. Next page, please. Out of these activities that we'd like to pursue in Indonesia, we started the import business of timber and wood materials, and we own about production companies, 4 of them in Indonesia, and also planting trees in West Kalimantan. Most of these are peatlands actually, but we plant trees in these areas. Protected forests as well as biodiversity conservation purposes forest, as well as production forest, as everyone has been touching on. Trees, the forest to be used for timber or wood production. By combining these, we conduct a business over the entire landscape. We conduct due management of these forest resources. Next page, please. As in presentations of everyone, many people emphasize the difficulty of management of peatlands. When it caught fire, it would be difficult to put down it. And also we are seeing dry atmosphere and climate due to climate change and slash and burn agriculture. And when you take that approach, it may cause significant fire, and that would not be stopped. And in Indonesia, in the past, there were significant forest fire cases, and CO2 would be significantly emitted, which is equivalent to the annual GHG emissions coming from the US. But to prevent that, what kind of things we are doing, that is shown in the next slide. You can see the canal and the past. In wetland, you cannot cultivate crops, so you need to create channels to let water flow. But when it becomes too dry, that would cause a problem. But we shift from a drainage water system to shift from drainage approach to water storage system. That is what we've developed in our management system, so that we can maintain appropriate water level. By doing so, we can let the peatland as at the very appropriate level of moisture. And in the past, there was a forest fire coming, the smoke coming to the Singapore. But in the forest we managed, we haven't seen any forest fire cases. So that shows how well our system is working. Next page, please. I briefly touched on mangrove forest with 10,000 hectares or so. And we are trying to increase the natural capital, and this will be managed as a protected forest area. Turning to the next page. These are the peatlands that we've been owing acacia plantation areas, and downstream side you can see mangrove protected forest areas. The amount of pesticides, we carefully control the amount so that we will not negatively affect the living organisms surrounding the river. Together with the other companies in the concession, we wanted to create a place where animals and beings can go freely in a green corridor. That is the activities we are doing. Next page, please. In the earlier session, we've heard why we are seeing deforestation, for what purposes timbers are used, according to Ohnaka-san. And we said that we own plants in the country, so local residents, we offer some plant trees, offer how to plant them, and in 7 years or so you can see falcata trees growing up very significantly, and we purchase these trees from local residents at the market price and use that for some fuels, and this will be the revenue income for local residents, and from our side we can acquire the fuels from these timbers. And next page, please. As covered by Professor's explanation, there's a satellite images. This is the changes of the photos of the same place. These are not suitable for agriculture purposes, but as time passes, you can see the green grows in terms of CO2 absorption. This is an excellent result. And the last slide. This is the phrases that we take as important to benefit ourselves, but benefit the society and others as well. We need to conduct businesses that would benefit others as well. That is the slogan we regard as important. And the next slide, this is mascot character. His name is Kikorin with 3 legs. Triple bottom line, people, planet, prosperity. These are what each of his represents. And in a new grad training and onboarding session or meeting for managers, I talk about climate, nature, and equity. All of these things are very important. Climate and nature equity, including human rights aspects as well. As you can see in the 3 legs of Kikorin, this character, that is the phrase I emphasize a lot in the in-house training. So in conducting businesses, we need to, yes, as described in conversion, we need to think about, we need to be careful about not to buy a forest coming from the converged forest. We need to we make that decision, although they are legally okay, but that's how we proceed our business. And that concludes explanation. Thank you very much. Izuka-san, thank you very much. This is very cute and pretty, but it has a very significant implication and meanings behind these 3 legs. Zahur-san, right now we've heard the explanation from Sumitomo Forestry. Could you make some comments?
It's okay. From the government perspective, what the Sumitomo Forestry initiate about the preservation and conservation of the area basically is very good for the environment, especially when Sumitomo Forestry in Indonesia basically is an expert in peatland management with the water management, but now they also try to include the mangrove with acquiring the company in a mangrove area in still in Kuburaya, isn't it? So I think with combining the peatland and the mangrove, I think the not only good for the ecosystem, wetland ecosystem, but also it is very good for reducing emission from deforestation and forest degradation, because the peatland and mangrove has the potential a big carbon rather than the mineral land. So I think it is also good for us to achieve the Volume Net Sink 2030 in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The corporate activities may cause negative impact on the environment, but when conservation had started, the positive impact would be so significant, as I hear to your explanation. Kitajima-san, any comment from your side? Yes. I've learned the history of Sumitomo through Izuka-san's explanation. In Japan, we achieved the restoration of forests, which was a very difficult path. But how you can prevent people conducting illegal logging? Governance to prevent that is very important concept. And as we are seeing, the representative from the government, in every country, government is crucial. What kind of approaches would be beneficial to the citizens, and in the long run, we can conserve the environment? I think that's a very tough challenge that we need to tackle with. Another thing I'd like to touch on is landscape, as Izuka-san has touched on. There are various land uses, and by combining these, you can achieve better ecosystem engineering in an overall perspective. That is another important aspect. So technology, as well as what kind of land use would be appropriate with large space. Maybe tree planting would be important, or natural forest would be important in some cases. And by also corridor connecting important greens are also important. Indonesia and Brazil and the DRC, I think each has its own ideas in how to proceed with these.
Thank you very much for your comment. And the last theme is about international cooperation. In the second part, there was a mention that funding framework, and also there was a mention about using state-of-art technology to work together globally. And we'd like to address this question to three countries, how we can leverage international collaboration. What is your expectation? Under Secretary Toirambe, can we ask, what do you expect on international collaboration? Thank you very much for your question. About international collaboration to preserve forest. At the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there were initiatives to protect forest in Africa. It was called CAFI, and this involved 6 countries, and Congo is one of them. And the purpose of CAFI is to Paris Accord and to achieve Paris Agreement and diversity framework, and also at the same time to improve the lives of people in Congo. And we work with CAFI, and we have local community program and a field-related initiative, especially transformation of forest field. Those are the actions to put a stop to deforestation, and at the same time we are aiming to improve the lives of local people. In April 22nd of 2016, we signed the very first LOE with CAFI, and in that document, $200 million for investment purpose 2016 to 2022, it was agreed to spend 200 billion, and this is contributed by Red Cross. In 2011, November 2nd, together with partner CAFI in Congo with the president and Boris Johnson from UK Premier. We had a discussion or meeting, and we renewed the partnership, and we signed the agreement. And the second LOE was signed from 2011 to 2031, and $500 million from 2011 to 26 was assigned from the fund. And our ecosystem based on this is a outcome-driven approach, and so multi-year partnership. Thanks to this multi-year partnership, by 2021, forest coverage, we are targeting to maintain that at 63%, and we're trying to increase that. And through the partnership, we have a very ambitious goals, and remaining not. It also contains to make up to the loss of the forest, but unfortunately, in other departments, milestones are being met. But when it comes to forestry, our forestry field, some countries do not observe their commitment. They do not perform. And we are still, so to some extent, treading the water, and we're not making any progress. And unfortunately, we're not delivering on those goals. And we have a lot of problems, and we identified them, but we have not resolved them. But that program review committee, CRP 60, together with CAFI, we are in discussion as to how we can make a progress, and we have to be responsible to meeting those milestones. And all the challenges, issues need to be addressed and tackled. And we were on the field, working on the field, and I would like to identify problems on the ground and take actions to find solution to them using technology. And we have a steering committee, and we had a meeting with JICA. When we have a project, the local people need to be engaged in the project. Local people need to have a stake in that project, because our partner will leave Congo eventually, but we need to take this matter into our own hands. And once the project ends, the land get abandoned, and we need to prevent that from happening, and we need to take this matter very seriously together with JICA. We all need to work together, and the countries, unless the country takes that matter into their own hands, there's no bright future, and once the project, because otherwise project comes to an end, and problem remains. Can you comment, Naris?
Yes, thank you. For Brazil, the founding and the cooperation, international cooperation are very important. We have an important project in Brazil, improve the control of illegal deforestation through advanced using radar images by SAR from JACA from Japan, and the AI technologies. In the Brasilia Amazon is only for the important good examples of the use of advanced technologies through international cooperation. In this case, the project is between IBAMA and the JICA and the other partners like as JAXA and the ICT. The project aims to strengthen the ability to control illegal deforestation in the Amazon using ALUS images and the artificial intelligence to control the deforestation in Amazon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How about Indonesia? What are your expectations on international collaboration? Zahal?
Yes, in terms of the international cooperation, we basically have like many multilateral as well as bilateral cooperation in forestry. So I think the multilateral forestry cooperation should be strengthened and focus on what the need of the developing countries to be more effective in terms of managing the tropical forests, especially for those who are in the equator, and I think this kind of the support from the developed countries can be used to make the sustainable forest management operate on the ground. So I think using the multilateral cooperation and coupled with the bilateral cooperation like Japan with the JICA, so I think it will make a more efficient and try to avoid the overlap about the aid or the cooperation among countries in the tropical areas. I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from JICA, Kurimoto-san, about international collaboration, can you make a brief comment?
Thank you very much. Now we heard from 3 countries. And first of all, from the Understand Secretary Tarambe from DR Congo, he mentioned appropriation for the ownership is giving ownership to the people who benefit, and whether or not that outcome of those activities, those projects remain after JICA has left the region, I think is a very important viewpoint. And going back to the word ownership, these are aspects that we place very much importance on for sustainable outcomes. That is where we are putting our efforts in. And Ms. Nada mentioned technical, scientific cooperation, and also efficient forest management. You mentioned, Mr. Zarfer, utilizing new technology, and in that way, multifaceted management of forestry, forest management, I believe, is important. In terms of international cooperation, to protect nature, who we should work on is people. Our targets, what we work with is nature, but ultimately, who degrades, who breaks the nature is people. And so international cooperation from that standpoint, I believe, is extremely important. That is my first point. And to that end, in rolling out various projects, there are different activities in trying to move or collaborate with corporations, but promises, keeping promises that we agreed on, I think, is another important viewpoint. And also, as we can see in the collaboration at Brazil, a science-based approach is another important aspect. In particular, there are things that we can do because we are extending our support from Japan and from and JAXA from a scientific approach. We would like to continue in our efforts in collaboration with those stakeholders. And personally, last of all, as a Japanese person, our relationship with nature is, I think, in a sense, unique. There's a Japanese uniqueness in how we relate with nature. We have the thinking of multitudinous gods in how we worship nature. We see gods everywhere in nature, and we are in awe, in a sense, when we see natural disasters. We have a sense of awe towards nature. So from both a cultural aspect and nature conservation in mind, we hope that we can continue to take Japanese approaches to lead international discussions and collaboration on nature conservation. Thank you all very much for your interesting, valuable inputs. And thank you to the audience for waiting. We'd like to now go on to Q&A. Now, the questions that we've received up to part 2 is what we'd like to ask our panelists to answer, first of all. Very sorry, excuse me. There were a couple of online questions that people had posted. Our participants had posted when they registered for today's seminar. Wait a moment, please. First of all, going to our first question. So the 3 countries here was represented here today hold the 3 largest tropical forests. Are there any collaborations that include all 3 countries, or are there any plans for new initiatives among the 3 countries going forward? And representing the 3 countries, can we ask Mr. Zarfur for your input here?
Yes. In terms of the biggest share of the tropical forest, which is Indonesia, Brazil, and the Congo, basically there was an initiative to cooperate between the 3 countries back in I think when Indonesia has been a presidency of the G20. The representative from Indonesia, Brazil, and Congo has been meeting in Bali, and then they are having I think it's an agreement to cooperate for international cooperation between 3 countries in terms of the sustainable forest management for tropical forests in the 3 countries. So I think this initiative needs to be aligned with the current existing international cooperation and focus on what can be done by Brazil, Indonesia, and Congo to preserve and to not only preserve but also sustainably manage the tropical forests for the betterment of the people, but also for contributing significantly to the global action for climate. I think this is the one that need to be follow up, and maybe can be also be expanded to other countries, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we'd like to go through a couple of questions that we've received up to part 2 of today's symposium. Now, first question is about the Congo Basin. Congo Basin encompasses several countries. Are there any initiatives that involve multiple countries that hold a part of the Congo Basin? Thank you very much for your extremely point-on question. The Congo Basin is under a similar situation to the basins in Amazon and Indonesia towards curtailing CO2 emission. We must work together. CO2 level emission is extremely high, too high, which in part is because of deforestation. And the stakeholders, the related countries, if we ignore that situation, it will become very dangerous. As a result of scientific research, the Congo Basin is storing more than 50% of CO2 among forests, so we do need to take measures. Now, when it comes to what kind of measures are necessary, first of all, there are 3 global frameworks that we need to align with in our planning. In terms of the 3 agreements, the Congo Basin with all the countries that are involved, together we must formulate a plan. The Congo Basin, however, is an area that is in extreme poverty. Therefore, what is necessary is our actions for a sustainable preservation of a forest that should also, at the same time, lead to the improvement of people's lives. It should benefit the people, the community. That leads to community forests. That is to say, compensation must be made to the local community through local conservation of forests. They must benefit because that is where what they utilize for their daily lives. And separate from that, in the Congo Basin, we have a vast biodiversity. We have very many species living, and also in the Montreal, as the Montreal Declaration says, we must protect the biodiversity of the Congo Basin. So we have a lot of plans in preparation.
Together with various partners, we'd like to work hard, and by June there will be small-scale meetings. The meetings related to basin, we'd like to further strengthen and enforce our activities. And climate change countermeasures needs to be taken together to ensure biodiversity and sustainability. Economic development is also another aspect that we are to discuss with related countries. Earlier, Nara-san has talked about this, but we are working for 3 basins. For us to fight against deforestation, first and foremost, we need to reduce CO2 emissions because this is directly tied with deforestation. Therefore, our activities related to these 3 global frameworks, through these, we'd like to further collaborate with each other to achieve targets. There are 3 targets. The first one is to be realistic. And then we need to take responsibility to take countermeasures against what happened in the past, deforestation and excessive logging. And in the previous slides, we've heard explanation on what we were in 8 years ago or before our activities have been taken. But through RED Plus, we are seeing the situation is changing. We are making progress. Our forest assets have been recovering being restored, as we see more assets of forest, then we can reduce CO2 emissions. Therefore, our contribution would be contributing to global reduction in CO2 emissions. That's what we'd like to work on in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next question. This is about a social forestry in Indonesia. You've mentioned that the contribution to the local society is working on. Could you share more specific examples in Indonesia? Zahur-san, could you share specific examples?
Yeah, in Indonesia, social forestry is conducted in 5 strategies. First, we have like a community forest, and the second, we have like a customary forest. Third, we have a community plantation forest. The fourth, we have a village forest based on the village, and the 5, we have like a forestry partnership. So because of the this kind of strategies basically based on the existing situation in Indonesian forests in terms of this biophysical condition as well as the legality of the forest. So in a conservation areas, for example, it belongs to the government, the central government. So but people living surrounding or inside the conservation areas of the protected forest has to be involved, will be involved in a social forestry based on the forestry partnership, meaning that they will be using some of the area of the conservation forest to manage and to utilize some of them to for their daily life as well as for the income. But for example, the others, for example, for the community forest, for example, they can have like a license for utilizing the forest area for production, for example, for timber production as well as for non-timber forest product and also for environmental services utilization. This is basically the social forestry in Indonesia is now operating, and many many best practices have been proven. For example, in some area in Kalimantan, they already are using the silvopastoral and also silvofisheries. In the mangrove area, they also have like timber management with agroforestry for utilizing the timber, but while waiting for timber harvesting, they can also do a farming, for example, rice and also other food staples for daily life as well as for commercial use. So this kind of social forestry program basically designed to match with the different situation in Indonesia and would like to have more access, more more participation of the people in Indonesia, not only for the big companies, but also for the local communities, as well as especially for the adat or customary people who are now can have like their own, their autonomous management of forest in Indonesia. So this like the examples of social forestry in Indonesia.
Thank you very much. Another question. This is about 30 by 30 target. By 2030, we need to ensure 30% of the land and sea as protected area. That is the international target. To achieve the 30 by 30 target, do you have any plans to increase protected areas? So I'd like to ask Nara-san from Brazil for this question.
Thank you. About the question, we explained about in the next year, we have COP30 in Brazil. And this case, it's a good opportunity to discuss about the climate change. And in the world. This occasion would be a significant milestone in the history of the climate change negotiation. Given the importance of the region for the world climate and the planet's biodiversity, because this conference occurs will occur in Para State. We look forward to productive debates on how to reconcile economic development with environmental protection, especially in this region. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And due to the time constraint, we'd like to take one question from the floor. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Only one person.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. Mine is more of comment and also contribution from the questions that you have posed to the panelists. And I think it will be unfair on the part of ITTO if we don't have this opportunity to also speak to issues. I am saying this because ITTO, that's International Tropical Timber Organization, that was formed almost 40 years ago and headquartered in Japan, in Yokohama. These three countries are members of ITTO. I mentioned that during my opening remarks. Apart from that, from the presentation, we also realized that tropical forests constitute 45% of all forests. And also, let me just give you another statistics. 80% of tropical producing countries are members of ITTO. And 90% of tropical trade are members of ITTO. And we are headquartered here in Yokohama, Japan. So it is important that we have this opportunity to work with our members who are panelists here. I just want to throw a little bit of light regarding the three themes that you mentioned: community involvement, corporate activities, and international cooperation. You mentioned these three things, and I want to just give a quick reaction to some of these things as we do from ITTO perspective. My big brother from DRC talked about DRC being impoverished. When he mentioned that, something came to me. Why would a country like DRC that has the biggest heart, that had the biggest lung of the forest in Africa, being so impoverished? It is impoverished because we are not seeing strong leadership, not just DRC, but from the Congo Basin, by way of involving the people in decision-making with regard to management of the forests. If you look at the Congo Basin, for example, how many local people participate in the timber trade? How many people? How many local people participate in terms of concession allocation for exploitation of those resources? I'm talking about the entire Congo Basin. So the impoverished people, how much deforestation do they cause? That is the question we have to ask ourselves. And if you also go to the Amazon Basin, how much of the indigenous people, how much of deforestation did they cause? Is it not the corporate folks who cause most of the deforestation? It is indeed the corporate. We have seen the example of Sumitomo, and you are doing a great job. That is actually a model for other people to also emulate. And there is elephant in the room here, but I'm not going to mention the name of that elephant. But these are the people who always try to enact laws in preventing the flow of tropical trade. And if you do that, poverty is going to increase, because most of these countries, the 3 countries that you mentioned here, most of the people who live around the fringes of the forest, they are only tapping what is in the forest for the sake of livelihood. It's not about big exploitation, it's about livelihood. So the question is, how do we address it? That was the question that was asked here. How do we address it? We can address that by increasing collaboration between countries and among countries. And this is something that I see lacking. I'm going to give a specific example. ITTO being based here, how much funding do we receive, for example, from the government of Japan to be able to reach out to the 76 countries who are members of the ITTO? Also coming back to JICA. JICA, you do understand that we have been in collaboration with you over the years. And I mentioned in my remarks on behalf of my boss, we renewed this collaboration in 2022. How much of project implementation do you have in these countries? However, in the history of ITTO, we have implemented projects on the ground in all tropical countries who are members to the tune of $430 million US. But these monies are no longer forthcoming. So I'm also making reference to the international collaboration, which is no longer coming to ITTO for us to be able, for example, to implement projects on the ground. I'll just give you a quick example of regional. I understand. You should have actually given us opportunity, audience here, to also ask questions, but you were dwelling more on those who are outside. And I think we are also important here. So give me some chance. So I'll give you a quick example. Just 3 weeks ago, we had a regional workshop on CITES, that is non-determined finding. And countries that were on board in Douala were Congo Basin countries. And these are part of the things that ITTO does. Regional projects in the Latin America region, regional projects in the Asia region, and regional projects in the Africa region. So collaboratively, if we do not continue to support agencies that have the track record in implementing projects on the ground, we are going to come back next year and then talking about the same thing. So I am urging JICA, I am urging the government of Japan and also donors who are here from Europe to begin looking at how collaboratively we can work together so that tropical timber trade can grow. And if it grows, it means that we are going to be able to enhance sustainable forest management. Until we do that, we will be here again talking about the lungs of the forest, but we do have agencies that have the know-how, that have the track record in implementing projects on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we have run out of time, and I'm afraid we don't have time to any questions or comments from the floor. And we'd like to briefly wrap up the discussions that we had in the first part from Mr. Ohnaka and Professor Kitajima delivered lectures to give us the the idea why we need tropical forest and how important they are, and also the blessing that we receive from those forests. Thank you very much for your concise explanation that really help us understand the importance of tropical forest. And panelist to the panelist, I will ask you to say a word after I summarize the symposium. And in the second part, from Indonesia, Congo, and Brazil, they share their realities with us. And 3 countries have stated very ambitious goals and strategies. In some cases, they are making progress, but as far as Congo is concerned, things are still very dire and difficult. And also, it's important for the government of Japan and other international organizations to continue to support them. And the third section is a panel discussion, and we talked about this matter from the perspective of local people and corporate activity and international cooperation. And we had a panelist about challenges around local community. We need to consider poverty and tradition and human rights. We cannot lump them together. We have native people and we have different peoples, and we need to think about different perspectives that different groups of people have, and about private activity. And consumers need to take this matter into their own hands, and international collaboration. Then developing nations, they also need to own this matter to sustain the international collaboration. And UN organizations lead some projects and the fundraising, but the international society needs to take this, own this, and then make good on promises that we made with developing countries. Those are very important for us to protect the lungs of the earth. And the Morimoto-san from JICA mentioned what Japan can do and how Japan can collaborate. I think it's going to be very important to capitalize on the advantage that only Japan has. We had 3 sections or 3 parts of the symposium. And I live in Japan, but the rainforest, challenges around rainforest is not somebody else's problem. It's our problem as well. And thank you for waiting. But to the panelists, before we close, can you share your commitment or idea as to how we can preserve rainforest? I'm afraid you need to be very quick. Each one of you has 2 minutes because we have already run out of time. Can we start with you, Ms. Nare?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting the symposium. And my last comment is about the protection for indigenous people in Brazil. The good question and the appointment by ITTO. And in Brazil, we have a Ministry of Indigenous People. And this ministry who's really important to recognize and guarantee I promote the rights of indigenous people and demarcate areas, defended the areas, and defended the cultural and the language and the other parts for developing and the protection the areas in Brazil. Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Edzarul from Indonesia for your last comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hobasang. I also thank you for inviting me in this very, very important and also very, very useful meeting, and to talk about the role of the tropical forest for the world. And my closing statement is about the sustainable forest management. Sustainable forest management means the sustainability. Sustainability means intergenerational equity. So basically, we not own this forest, but we borrow from our next generation. That's why we have to utilize wisely. We have to make the most of the current resources for our next generation, not only for us. That's why prevention, conservation, but also wisely utilization of tropical forests is a must. Balancing all the interests within the tropical forest needs to be done. And we, as a citizen of the world, need to get together, to act together, to make sure that our tropical forests will last forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we would like to ask Mr. Torirambe for your comments. I'd like to extend my gratitude as well to all of you, in particular to JICA and the Japanese government. At this time, thank you very much for inviting us to Japan. For us, what is extremely important is, in particular for the three basins, what is important, especially for the Congo Basin, what is important for all three basins is important for us. We are the lungs of humanity. And also, we are a key point in measures against a cultural of climate change. And we have different, the three different tropical forests have issues. And one point is that all of the countries in these areas are developing countries. And there were some concerns that were raised earlier. And there are many obstacles that prevent our access. For example, in DR Congo, that is the corporations that produce timber being limited to foreign companies. We have strong intentions or strong wills, but the issue is capital. We cannot develop on our own because of capital issues. Countries like Japan and countries like Japan have a lot of ports. We need tropical forests, but we have obstacles, many obstacles compared to other countries, other developed countries. We have very many obstacles. Foreign capital is in DR Congo, but they are not opening up to us. We do not have enough means on our hands, which lead to the obstacles. I hope this you can understand our situation. There are international partnerships, but there are issues there as well. So how to manage those means is another issue. For example, Japan has JICA, But not all entities, not all agencies conduct their activities in similar thinking. For example, when timber is being produced by community residents, who is responsible for that forest? And this, in a sustainable way, for the local residents to conduct their work in a sustainable way, that takes money, but they do not have those means. That is the situation with our residents, with our people in Congo, and deforestation. Thinking about that, listening to the other speakers, I have deepened my understanding. For example, if all three basins come together hand in hand to work together, that may be a way to go, a path forward, and funding together with society. If we can smartly utilize those fundings together among the three basins, I think that would be an important path to take. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments. And thank you for today. Cooperation is a word that we heard so many times this afternoon. Our company works a lot with the Ministry of Environment in Japan and in DR Congo as well. In the peat land management, they have visited our land from DR Congo, the Ministry of Environment of DR Congo. A lot of cross-border cooperation is progressing, not just traditional ways, but remote sensing and other advanced technology was mentioned. And remote sensing using satellites are examples of initiatives that we are experimenting with at our company as well. So what kind of initiatives corporations take when we think about that? A correct evaluation of forests and to sustain and preserve the forests so that it could lead to revenue for the local residents, the local community could lead to preventing the local people from trying to gain value, revenue by other means that does not lead to preservation of the forest. Now here together we are gathering. We have gathered from government entities and corporations and such, but all of us are consumers, and we talked about indigenous people and such, but we did not talk very much about consumers in developed countries. But we, the consumers in developed countries, are the ones who are consuming the beef, the agri-food, agri-products that come from the forest areas. So responsible studies must be conducted in a responsible way by the companies who come in between the forest and the consumers. And from a consumer's perspective, we should think about where our the products we use come from in order to stop deforestation. From going forward, I'd like to take this opportunity to be able to think about what more we can do together with the local communities and such.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Professor Kitajun for one word. Blue Earth, who owns it? That is the one phrase I'd like to say. We are blessed with nature. Every one of us, living on Earth, we enjoy the blessings of the Earth, and we need to be thankful, we need to be grateful for that. And as Ahu-san talked about, we need to hand down this to descendants in the next generations. Some richness cannot be measured by money, even when we see money flowing into. Without clear water, without comfortable environment for families to live in, then it's nothing, it's meaningless. So, owning a land, managing lands, this is what we are allowed to do. Who owns the blue earth? That is the question we need to think about, not only in developing countries, but also developed countries and companies contributed to the deforestation in these countries. That is something we need to work on together to improve. Thank you very much. Professor Kitajima, thank you very much, who owns the Blue Earth. That is the key takeaway for the symposium. Thank you, Morimoto-san. Yes, thank you all very much for being with us today, and also the panelists. Thank you very much for sharing your frank and honest opinions and sharing perspectives. The conservation of tropical forests, it's not an easy thing to do. There are barriers and challenges, but going over that, we need to realize the true conservation. I think for that to be achieved, passionate discussions would be of utmost importance. And also today we have participants joining virtually as well. And based on the cooperation with JICA, with so many experts, so many researchers or cooperative team members, thanks to them all, we can have this kind of opportunity for conservation of tropical forests. So please think about that as well. JICA has a vision to connect the world by trust as our vision. Through a lot of discussions, we can build trust and relationship with many people. That is how we'd like to proceed our project. Thank you all very much. Thank you for all the panelists for being with us for such a long time. We'd like to conclude part 3. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much, all the panelists, for your participation. We are reaching the end of the symposium. We would like to invite Mr. Tetsuo Tanimoto, Director, Overseas Forestry Corporation Office, Japan Forest Agency. Mr. Tanimoto, the floor is yours. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Tanimoto, Director, Overseas Forestry Corporation Office, Japan Forestry Agency. I'd like to give closing remarks. First and foremost, thank you all very much for all the presenters and panelists sharing very valuable information, and the participants and attendees to the symposium, as well as JICA and Mainichi newspaper, organizers and planner for today's symposium, and all the stakeholders. Thank you all very much indeed. Every year we are seeing more dire situations, climate change and biodiversity related challenges. Tropical forests have served very important roles, and as major regions, we invited people from Brazil, Indonesia, and DRC. All the participants from the governments got together to hold the symposium. I think this was a very rare and important opportunity for us all. And JICA political advisor, Mr. Ohnaka, as well as speaker from Kyoto University engaged in the research on tropical forests, Professor Kitajima, and JICA international experts, Mr. Morimoto from JICA, as well as Ms. Izuka from Sumitomo Forestry, sharing the corporate activities for forest protection. We heard a lot from all of the speakers and panelists to know various things about where we are not able to access easily from Japan, but this was a very fruitful time for us to enjoy. Conservation of tropical forests as well as sustainable development, which both would be very difficult challenges and issues, but to address this issue, there are so many ideas and initiatives to enable this. That is what we all learned through the presentation and discussions. The word tropical forest conservation involves a lot of things, people living there, the local communities, as well as enterprise activities and products produced through corporate activities in the region. In Japan, Japanese people are also involved in that process because we have that kind of products and use them. And for such challenges, we need to address in a sustainable manner through international cooperation. I think the need for that is newly highlighted in today's symposium. Japan Forestry Agency as well would like to support the conservation of tropical forests. We second our employees to JICA projects, so make contribution to international organizations, to FAO or ITTO to conduct projects or COP conferences. We contribute to discussions in such platforms and also in JCM or bilateral credit systems, RED Plus or tree planting. For these, we are trying to set up a dual environment so that we can form appropriate projects in these, so that through that we'd like to continuously cooperate to enable conservation and restoration of foreign tropical forests. Lastly, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to all the participants to today's symposium, and I sincerely hope that the insight you learned today will be of some benefit to your future work and activities, and this will be taken with ownership so that it will be fully utilized for sustainable forest management as well as countermeasures against climate change. And that concludes my closing remark. Thank you all very much. Mr. Tanimoto, thank you very much. With that, we'd like to conclude the open symposium, Protecting the Lungs of the Earth, Understanding the Current Status of the World Three Major Tropical Forest Challenges and Conservation Measures. Sorry for behind schedule, but thank you very much for being with us till the end. Lastly, I'd like to make 3 requests. First, after the symposium, we will be sending a questionnaire to all the participants. We would very much appreciate your feedback so that we can take reference and improve what we are to do in the future. All the participants at the venue and people joining virtually, you will all receive questionnaires. And the second one is the participants at the venue. Later in the lobby, there will be networking session with the participants. We serve coffee, tea, and some meals. If you have some time, please stay there for a while, and we would appreciate if we could hear from you about your feedback on the symposium. The last one at the request, people at the venue, please leave your translation devices on the table before you leave. That concludes the symposium. Thank you all very much for your participation today.